Chibi Assassin's Creed by Titania. First installment. Chapter 1. Ezio Auditore. He watched as his hand moved forwards, as if it were no longer a part of him, as if he had no control over it, and at last it placed itself firmly on the apple's smooth side. It looked metallic, but felt warm and soft to the touch. He didn't have the time to think about the light from the apple, because suddenly the world around him changed. Everything had been consumed by the light. The apple had dissolved into a golden mist and was swirling around his body. He felt a change in his body, almost like it was being pressed together from all sides. He suddenly felt warm and safe. He pulled his knees to his chest, placed his arms around his legs, and rested his chin on his kneecaps. He felt a tail that seemed to come from behind him wrap itself around and over his body. He felt a pair of ears laying flat under his hood, but it wasn't an uncomfortable feeling. When he next woke, it was to a man with bunny ears, jamming what looked like miniature swords at something, or someone, that had almost squished them. The young man, for he was a man, leapt back with a yelp and looked down at them. At this point, Ezio had uncurled himself and was now sitting in something soft while rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Beside him, trying to not fall over, was someone who was dressed as an assassin. He had a pair of bunny ears that seemed to be one with his hood, and a puffy bunny tail. The bunny was saying something in a language that Ezio didn't recognize. He turned his attention to the young man, who looked like he needed a whole week of sleep. He wondered if he understood anything the bunny was saying. The young man didn't seem to care what the bunny was saying. He picked them both up, avoiding the mini sword the bunny was waving around, and moved them out of his way so he could once again flop down on the softness under them. Ezio figured that it must be the young man's bed. Why else would he fall asleep on it? Ezio wasn't one to refuse the need for sleep, especially when he actually felt safe for once. He tried to stand, using the young man's body as a guide so he didn't fall, and found his way to the young man's face. He then curled up right next to the young man's neck and fell asleep, listening to the bunny shouting at the sleeping young man. When he woke up, he didn't hear the bunny. He stood up, using the young man's head so he didn't fall, and saw the bunny sitting in front of the young man's face. He was silent, but was poking the young man with his mini sword. It didn't take long for the bunny to notice him, but the bunny remained quiet. He did stop poking the young man's face, though. Ezio figured that if he didn't understand the bunny wouldn't understand him either. The bunny seemed to have come to the same realization, so he pointed at his face, for his body was way too small, and told the bunny his name. "Ezio," he said, looking at the bunny to see if he had understood. The bunny looked at him with amber eyes. "Altaïr," said the bunny, and then gave the young man a questioning look before returning his gaze to Ezio, who could only shrug as he didn't know the young man's name either. Just then, a door to the room opened, and Ezio heard a man call out a name, as if to ask if the young man was awake. "Desmond?" More was said, but Ezio didn't understand what was being said. The man at the door took one look at them, and then slowly walked backwards and out of the room, closing the door after him before shouting another name, "Rebecca!" Again, more was said, but Ezio still didn't understand what was being said. Then a woman stuck her head into the room and looked at him, and then Altaïr. She then also closed the door silently behind her. Altaïr also looked at the two strangers who had appeared in the doorway, and when the woman had closed the door, he had turned his eyes back to Ezio. Altaïr then began poking the young man with his mini sword again, probably trying to wake him up, Ezio mused to himself. When the young man, Desmond, woke up, Altaïr had managed to actually draw blood from his cheek, but only because he had slashed Desmond with his mini sword. Desmond rolled over on his back and then sat up and turned around to face them. Altaïr was trying to stand, but was struggling because the mattress beneath him was soft. Ezio, on the other hand, was sitting, playing with the tip of his white tail. Desmond began talking in what Ezio recognized as the language Altaïr had used. He didn't seem too worried about Ezio. The two conversed back and forth for a while before Desmond turned to Ezio. "And I suspect you don't know how this happened either," he asks, heaving a sigh and pinching the bridge of his nose. "I'm afraid not. One moment I was in Leonardo's workshop with the apple, the next I was here," Ezio said, really hoping Desmond understood him. Luck was with him. "Altaïr tells me that Sean and Rebecca came in. Any idea what they wanted?" Ezio shook his head. "I only heard names. I did not understand what they were saying. Sorry," he added, looking down and stroking his tail. "It's okay, just..." Desmond heaved another sigh. It looked like he needed more sleep. "Stay in here till I come back," he said to Ezio. It was probably the same instruction he gave Altaïr right after. He then left the room in search of the ones named Sean and Rebecca.